Hi, thanks for joining me. I started posting videos of my travels with Goldie in May, and I get a lot of nice comments, so thank you to all those who watch and get some enjoyment out of them. Now, one comment that keeps cropping up is, what's the new BSA really like? And I have to say that also when I'm out and about, this is often the first question I'm asked when I meet other bikers. I've owned Goldie for almost 6 months now, and we've recently passed the 2,000 mile mark, so I think I've pretty much got to know her. It's probably a good time to pass on my thoughts and findings for the benefit of those who might be considering one, or if you're just curious. I don't intend going into all the specification facts and figures. They're available elsewhere on the net and on YouTube. What I am doing here is passing on my own experience, warts and all, of what it's like living with a new BSA Goldstar. And I stress, these are my thoughts. Others may disagree, and that's just fine. A little background first. Like many others, my attention was grabbed back in late 2021, I think it was, when the name BSA started appearing in motorcycle press and at bike shows. I've been riding bikes since the mid-60s and had my share of BSAs, and I always liked them, and the proposed new Goldstar just ticked all the boxes for me. We waited. And we waited. We saw them at shows. We saw them on the internet. Nothing happened. Finally, in November 2022, the demonstrators started to arrive at the dealers. In December, I went over to my local dealer, that's Eddie's at Tadcaster, to see one in the flesh. It was a terrible day, cold and wet, but I'd already watched half a dozen reviews on YouTube, so I knew pretty much how it would go. I didn't really need a test ride, I just wanted to try one for size and have a close look. Obviously, I liked what I saw, because I ordered one there and then. It arrived mid-February, but I waited till 1st of March to pick it up. The weather was still cold and wet, but I thoroughly enjoyed the ride home. Incidentally, the cover picture I use on most of the videos is me picking it up from Eddie's, fresh out the showroom, before I'd even had a chance to sit on it. Just a quick word about the colour. It's Highland green. Yeah, I know in certain lights and in practically all photos and videos you see, it looks blue, but in daylight it is definitely green. Well, a sort of bluey green, and to my eye a very nice colour. That's why I chose it. Anyway, beauty is in the eye and all that. On collection day, it started up first turn as you'd expect and sounded beautiful. I set off with a big smile on my face. Then I noticed the engine management light was on. I hadn't got out the car park, so I just turned round and went back to the workshop door. The mechanic was great. He told me that some of the bikes were throwing up this error. It was caused by a slightly higher tick over than the ECU was expecting when the engine was started from cold. He plugged in his code reader, showed me the readout, and then reset to turn off the light. All of the testing and development for the bike was done in India, which is obviously a much hotter climate. So this didn't show up till machines started arriving in the UK. Anyway, not a problem. It doesn't affect the running of the engine in any way, and a software update for the ECU was in the pipeline. I'll come back to this later in the video. I got out for a ride whenever the weather allowed to get some miles on the clock and get everything bedded in. First service was at 500 miles, and running in was just really a case of don't over rev or labour the engine. I just rode it normally but gently, but could feel that it was eager to go faster. For the first couple of 100 miles it didn't always like going into 5th gear. You'd move the lever up to change from 4th to 5th, but it just stayed in 4th. But I quickly realised that this was only happening at RPMs over 3000. If I changed just below that, it went in without a problem. And as the engine and transmission bedded in, this little idiosyncrasy disappeared, and pretty soon it was selecting gears perfectly. By the time she'd had her first service, things were bedding in and freeing off nicely. You could feel the difference in general performance and start to take advantage of it. What's she like to ride then? Well, a super fast sports bike she certainly ain't, but neither is she a plodder. Riding at all legal UK road speeds is well within her capabilities. She's as happy cruising on the motorway at 70 as she is bimbling through the villages at 30. Top speed is just over the ton, though I've no intention of testing that out, but there are a couple of YouTube videos that do just that. That means that at 70 there's still plenty left, so you're not thrashing it at its maximum. The engine's smooth and there's very little in the way of vibration. It picks up well from lower speeds as well. When I'm doing 40 in 5th gear and you come to a 50 or 60 limit, just twist the throttle and she zips up to speed pretty quick. I'd probably class acceleration as brisk, certainly fast enough for quick overtakes or getting out at junctions smartish. No idea what the actual 0 to 60 time is, and to be honest, that really doesn't interest me. It's not that kind of bike to me, and if that's what you want, then you should be looking elsewhere. Fuel economy is quite respectable. I'm normally getting between 65 and 70 miles per gallon. In fact, I checked it on the last fill, and it took 8.05 litres, that's 1.77 gallons, to cover 125 miles. That works out at 70.62 miles per gallon. Obviously that's going to depend on how you ride it. Riding position's fairly upright, as you'd expect from a classic layout like this. That means you do get a bit of wind resistance at higher speeds, but I've never found that particularly uncomfortable or a problem, although I haven't done any long motorway journeys yet. About 20 minutes on the M180 is the longest so far. Some owners have fitted fly screens to channel the airflow up and over, but I prefer the naked look. The seat's firm but comfortable. I've done several trips over 2 hours without a break and not experienced any aches or pains. Well, no more than my old body usually does anyway. The suspension as standard, I'd say, is okay. That's to say, like most lower priced bikes, it's a compromise. It's got to work for a wide variety of different loads and different riding styles. The rear shocks are adjustable for preload, but the front forks aren't. I ran it with the rear on the lowest setting for a good while, and it was quite acceptable for the way I ride. If you want to be a bit more aggressive in your cornering and braking, then you'll probably be looking at an upgrade anyway. There are better aftermarket items available, and I'll come back to those a bit later. The controls all work well. Now, there has been criticism of the switch gear, and many say it looks cheap and plasticky. There's certainly better looking stuff on other bikes, but all I can say is it works well. Everything functions. The switches have a positive feel. The brake and clutch levers aren't span adjustable, but I can operate them both without too much of a stretch. The Mickey Mouse mirrors, they work fine for me, but I know they don't suit everybody, especially if you're a bit broad in the shoulder. Some fit bar end mirrors to get round this. The fuel gauge is pretty accurate. If I run it till there's 1 bar showing, it takes around 9 litres of fuel, so there's still a good reserve. I've only once had the low fuel light on, and it took just under 10 litres that time. This is a 12 litre tank, by the way. The clutch is quite light and smooth on the take-up. Gear change, once the initial stiffness had disappeared, is great. It's quiet, positive, very easy to select neutral. There's no gear indicator, which some have moaned about, but I've never been used to one, so I don't see a problem. Generally, you know what gear you're in by the sound of the engine and the feel of the bike, and you change up accordingly. There is though a neutral light, which I do find useful. She came fitted with Pirelli Phantom Sports Comp tyres, and I've not had any problems with these. I've ridden in wet as well as dry conditions, and they hold the road well enough for the type of riding I do. They are fitted with tubes. Brakes are well up to the job, with a good feel to the front one. I've not had any reason to test out the ABS, so can't comment on how effective that is, and to be honest, this is the first bike I've owned that's actually had ABS fitted. I'm also pretty old school, and still ride and brake how I was taught, so I normally use both brakes together anyway. Fit, finish and general quality. Well, this is a £6.5 bike, plus on the road costs, so it's built to a price. Yeah, it could have had nicer looking switchgear. The BSA logos could have been cast into the die-cast engine cases, but overall I don't find much to moan about. Nothing's come loose or fallen off. The paint and general finish is good, though the tank chrome is a little bit dull on mine. With the exception of the engine management light, everything works just as it should. As it comes, the bike is a very capable, comfortable and good looking machine, and I'd be happy with it even if I weren't able to change anything. To my eyes, it's got enough of the looks of the bikes I was riding back in the 60s and 70s, whilst not trying to be an outright replica. It's also got just enough modern bits to make it more user friendly without going over the top. So, what don't I like about it, and what have I changed? I've had plenty of time to think about this, and I have to say there's really nothing that I actively dislike, but there are things that I think can be improved. From a maintenance point of view, a centre stand would have been nice, but it's not a major problem. I've had a number of other bikes over the years that didn't have one, and it's pretty easy to work round. I already had a bike jack, and I've since adapted a cheap paddock stand to lift the back wheel for chain lube and cleaning. The handlebar grips, they're quite nice rubber mouldings with the BSA logo, but I found them a little small in diameter. That's because I've got a bit of arthritis in my hands, and a bit bigger diameter is more comfortable. I fitted grip puppies. They're a foam rubber tube that fit over the top of the standard ones. The only downside is that it makes the stretch to the levers a tiny bit longer, so as soon as somebody starts doing adjustable levers, I'll probably fit some. I have changed the suspension. Now, as I've already said, the standard setup works, but it's a compromise. Recently, TEC Bike Parts started offering upgrade kits with the ability to adjust the front preload. They also do rear units which are shrouded and, to my eye, suit the style of the bike a bit better. They got good reviews and they weren't expensive either, so I fitted both. I did a video at the time and I'll put a link to that at the end. I do find now that I'm getting a bit smoother ride on these potholed roads we have to put up with in the UK. I've added a clock that sits nicely between the speedo and the rev counter, and a sat-nav mount that's wired into a spare feed in the headlamp. I changed the horn. The original one did its job just fine, but it looked a bit cheap and nasty, so I treated it to an Altet style horn that looks a lot better, I think. I've also added panniers and a rear rack. The panniers are by Cotswold Hipster and made from waxed canvas and leather. Really good quality, but I made my own support frames from some stainless steel tube I had lying about. I was originally intending to get the BSA panniers, but to be honest I got fed up with waiting and being told they would be available any day now. The Cotswold ones were available from stock and they actually came in at half the price as well. The rear racks from Classic Bike Racks. Oh, and I nicked someone else's idea and painted in the BSA logo on the seat with gold paint, just for a little bit of bling. I'm not a big fan of chrome, so I actually covered some of the tank up with a pair of rubber knee pads. Again, I think they suit the style of the bike. That's it really. Some folk don't like the look of the rear end and the way the backlight and number plates fitted. There are alternative ones available, but I'm quite happy with mine the way it is. Same goes for the exhaust really. Some don't like the look or the sound or the fact that it's got a cat. There's aftermarket ones starting to become available now to improve performance, sound louder and look different if that's what you want. I've got no plans to change mine at the moment. I think by now you've probably got a good idea of what I think about my BSA Goldstar. I love it. It's certainly lived up to my expectations. The only issues I've had so far are the initial reluctance to select fifth gear, which quickly cured itself, and the engine management light. As far as the EML's concerned, I haven't done anything about it yet. It was happening during the cold weather earlier in the year, and as soon as the weather warmed up, it stayed off. When it was on, it had no effect whatsoever on the running of the engine. It came on purely because the initial tick over was higher than it expected to see. I fully expect it to start coming on again once temperatures start dropping in autumn and winter. There has been a software update released by BSA, and I can take it to my local dealer to have the ECU updated. At the moment, I simply can't be arsed. I'm too busy getting out on the bike and enjoying it, and it can wait. I know that some owners have had other issues as well as the EML. I'm on a few Facebook groups for both this and other makes of bike, and see plenty of posts about things going wrong, but as far as I can see, the new BSA is no worse than any other make when it comes to reliability. Well, that's my thoughts. It's how I've found the bike. We all have different likes and expectations, and we all get our biking enjoyment in slightly different ways. So if you don't agree with my findings, that's fine. I'd be interested in any comments you might leave. Anyway, I hope you found this of some interest. Don't forget to leave a like if you have, and if you want to watch any more of my ramblings, please subscribe to the channel. Hope you can join me again. So cheers for now.